This is OpenNMS 101 again, Module 10, Part B, the Passive Status Keeper, Traps, and the Event Translator. The top line represents elements inaccessible to OpenNMS. In Part A, the intermediary element forwarded the status of inaccessible elements to OpenNMS using REST calls, or send-event.pl. The intermediary device may not be able to generate REST calls or use send-event.pl. However, it is likely that the intermediary device can generate an SNMP trap. The problem is that traps are generally assigned to the element that forwarded them, in this case, the intermediary device. Within this tutorial, localhost will be acting as an intermediary device, and so the traps that it generates will be assigned to it in OpenNMS. OpenNMS, using something called event translation, can assign received traps to other nodes. All this will be demonstrated. The event translator documentation is in the Horizon Operations documentation under Deep Dive Events Event Translator. There are 3 files related to event translation. The first is the events file. In this case, that would be Tutorial.events.xml. Translating SNMP traps to events was covered in Module 7. Any changes to this file require the event-d configuration to be reloaded. Event-to-event translation is configured in the file translator-configuration.xml. This file will be used to convert the down-up traps to a uei.openNMS.org/services/passive service status event. The OID type value combinations must be converted to the required passive service status parameters. Recall from Part A that these are the parameters. Only passive node label, passive IP address, passive service name, and passive status are required. This tutorial is ignoring the passive reason code. The final file is logs/translator.log, which, depending on the logging level, provides information useful in debugging. This tutorial uses SNMP v3 traps. SNMP v3 traps are covered in Module 7. The common ops are related to v3 and will be obvious on the command line. The agent. This tutorial will use Horizon 105's external IP 192.168.159.105:10.162. The uptime is given with 2 single quotes. The trap OID for a downed element will be 1.3.6.1.4.1.99999.88.77.1. The trap ID for an upped element will be 1.3.6.1.4.1.99999.88.77.2. The OID type value for the passive node label will be trap-OID.0, lowercase s, indicating a string value, and element name, which will be element 01. The remaining values, passive address and passive service name, are constants, 0.0.0.0 and inaccessible monitor, respectively. In this tutorial, the passive status is given by the trap OID. Change directory to opt OpenNMS, etc. Edit Tutorial.events.xml. The first trap to event element uses the ID of 1.3.6.1.4.1.99999.88.77 and the generic value of 6 and the specific value of 1 for the down trap to event definition. The second trap to event element uses the ID 1.3.6.1.4.1.99999.88.77, the generic value of 6 and the specific value of 2 for the up trap to event definition. Save and close the file. Reload the event-d configuration using send-event.pl, reload daemon config, event-d. Send the down trap. The only thing that should happen is that an event is assigned to the localhost/Horizon 105 node. The trap is assigned to the originating source. Returning to the GUI, note the event has already made it to the node. Click on the event ID. Focus on the description and note the parameter name equal parameter value. This will be used in the translation. Return to the console and send the up trap. The only change is in the trap OID and the OID of the OID type and value element. Refresh the screen and note the new event, received inaccessible element up. There are no changes to the localhost Horizon 105 node. Nothing has happened to element 01 either. To build the down event translation in translator-configuration.xml, begin with the basic element definition of event-translation-spec. The UEI attribute value is the UEI of the event defined in Tutorial.events.xml, inaccessible element /down. Add the mappings and mapping elements. The first assignment is the name of the event being translated to. In this case, it is always going to be services/passive service status. The next value assigned is the passive node label value, which equals the value of the OID type value combo in the original trap, wherein the OID was trap-OID.0. The last three assignments are all constants within this tutorial. Passive IP address is 0.0.0.0. Passive service name is inaccessible monitor. And passive status is down. So this defines the translation of the inaccessible element /down event to a services/passive service status event. To build the translation of the inaccessible element /up event to a services/passive service status event, wherein the up status is indicated by the parameter passive status, copy and paste the down translation, changing the original UEI, OID, and passive status value as shown. Change to the opt OpenNMS etc directory. Edit translator-configuration.xml. Add the elements just covered to the file. First, add the inaccessible element /down to services passive service status translation with passive status equal down. Then add the inaccessible element /up to services passive service status translation with passive status equals up. Save and close the file. Change to the /opt OpenNMS etc events directory and edit Tutorial.events.xml. Find the traps/inaccessible element /down event and change log message dest to do not persist. Find the traps inaccessible element /up event and change the log message dest to do not persist. Do not persist will not log the event in the database, but will send it to daemons that are listening for this type of event. Save and close the file. Because translator-configuration.xml was changed, restart OpenNMS using system control restart OpenNMS.service. Check the status at the end of restart using OpenNMS-v status. Note event translator is a process. The event translation should be ready. Log back into OpenNMS. Make way to element 01 by selecting Info, Node, and selecting element 01. Return to the console. Enter the SNMP trap command indicating that element 01 is down. Return to the GUI and refresh the page. The service is down. There is a node element 01 is down event, and the interface is down. Click on Info Nodes and look at element 02. It should be unaffected. Click on Info Nodes and look at element 03. It should be unaffected. Click on Info Nodes and look at the local host. It should be unaffected. Click on Info Nodes and return to element 01. Switch back to the console. Enter the SNMP trap command indicating that element 01 is up. Return to the GUI. This should be element 01's front page. Recycle the page. The service is back up. The up event is present, and the interface is up. That sums up using traps and event translation with the passive status keeper. In review, an intermediary element set a trap indicating the status of an inaccessible element to OpenNMS. The .1 trap indicated the inaccessible element was down. The resulting event was traps/inaccessible element/down. The .2 trap indicated the inaccessible element was up. The resulting event was traps/inaccessible element/up. The traps OID type value OID value of trap OID .0 gave the node label value. The initial traps to events conversion was configured in Tutorial.events.xml. Both down and up events were converted to service/passive service status events through the event translator as configured in translator-configuration.xml. The passive status was set to down or up as appropriate. Other service/passive service status required parameters were configured in translator-configuration.xml. Passive node label was set to the value of trap-oid.0 in the original intermediary element's trap. Passive IP address was set to 0.0.0.0 and passive service name was set to inaccessible monitor. Coming up, Module 11, Data Collection.